Hello, hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to a later episode and another episode of Teach Jenn Tech. If anybody was wondering, I'm not always the greatest at communicating schedules, is really what it comes down to, but we may be changing times altogether. If this time works better for people, I don't know. Tell me what you all think. Today we have Eddie on the show, and Eddie, please introduce yourself and what you're teaching us today.
Yeah, so my name is Eddie Zaneski. I'm a software engineer at a company called ChainGuard. I'm a maintainer for the Kubernetes project and the Six Store project, which are both pretty big Go projects. And I'm teaching you Go.
Yay! Oh, and I totally forgot to change the background, y'all. So, you should definitely see that here in a moment if I can click the right thing. That's actually so, y'all. Eddie was open to doing. There we go. Learning about golang. Eddie was open to teaching basically anything. He was just like, whatever. Let's just do this. And I know that I do a lot of JavaScript, also a lot of Python and different frameworks in JavaScript. Yet I keep hearing about Go. I just keep hearing about it. And I'm like, and Eddie was actually the first person to tell me about Go when we met at, oh goodness, was it the Orbit meetup?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the Orbit meetup in Denver. And it was right when this was probably 3 or 4 months ago. I'm trying to get into DevRel. And he was like, oh, talking about Go. And I'm like, what's Go? I didn't even know it was a language. There's a lot of languages I don't know that are a language. So I'm excited to hear about it because it's, I think I just heard of a company called Charm, and I think they build on Go too.
Yes, they do.
And that's another reason why I was very curious about it, because I was like, Charm looks so cool. Plus, they have the best names ever. I saw them on a live stream with GitHub with Roselle, and I'm like, I want to be able to do that someday because they have the coolest names. That's how they got me caught. But what up, homie? Yay! Somebody was able to change their schedule. So I know we talked about that we're going to work on doing this with VS Code, and then I completely forgot what the plugin was. So let me Google that.
If that doesn't work, we can use my little editor thingy.
Okay, well, I will share my screen so people can actually see this happening. Because I feel like, and y'all, I do think being able to Google is a skill, because me and my Googles don't always work, which is, I find pretty hilarious, but it's not always hilarious for everyone else. So VS Code live share. That's what we're going to go with. Yay. And do you have the link? In the marketplace. This is marketplace. This is the marketplace. Okay, I'm sending you this really quick.
I'm installing VS Code.
Oh, hey, yeah, that too. And just so everybody else knows, I asked to do it in VS Code still, even though there's other options, because something that I've realized that does make it harder to learn is having to always switch tools, because then I'm learning the different tool where a lot of other people have used the tools I use. It's just not their go-to tool. So, yes.
That's why I use Vim everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Me and Vim. I don't know. I don't know about that.
All right.
Laura, I was telling you about when she's on for Python, and I ran into Vim. I didn't mean to. I was very stuck.
All right, let's see.
And then
live share. Okay, I'm installing that.
Sweet. And I need to make a folder and things and stuff.
Okay, I have this installed.
Sweet. Do you want to make the folder or do you want me to make the folder?
Let's have you make it.
Okay. It's weird. I automatically went to terminal to go make a folder. I don't know if that's normal.
That's what I did.
I'm like, I feel like enough people have been on that they've like teached me how to do this that I'm like, oh, this is weird. Okay, code. Although I was just on a PC and is it still MK or MKDIR to make a new folder?
Yes.
Okay. And we will call this
Nice.
and then something that I was talking about last stream was there is this well, I guess I should ask this because this kind of screwed us up when I was learning a bit of Svelte. Should I go ahead and create a repo here through command line first, or should I install in then make a repo?
I would just do it locally first.
Okay. Easy enough. I like that idea. All right. Well.
But fun fact, that CLI tool is actually built in Go.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. What? Why? Exit. Okay. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. And how do I share this now?
I think it's at the bottom there.
Oh, live share. Where it says live share? Yeah, that would be. What? Already signed in.
Okay, I have to do that too.
Authorize. What? It signed me in with GitHub, and now I'm at GoDaddy Office 365, and I have Gmail. This is confusing. All right, let's see. Starting, signing it, cancel, go. Okay. Fine. We'll just start from scratch really quick.
Do what every developer does and turn it off and on again.
I think I have to have VS Code open for this, but we'll find out. Yay. Live share. We've signed in with GitHub. Allow. Please be my friend. Okay. Hey. Okay. Copy. Paste. Yay.
All right. So I'm going to click it. And hopefully it... Oh, it gave me... Oh, I can continue right from the web browser. That's cool.
Oh, hey.
Let's see if this works. Am I connected?
I think so. Yay.
Hooray.
Hey, we got there. Okay. So, and yes, homie, I totally think that my my Mac is just hates on me right now because I just got it back yesterday. I spent many hours at the Apple Store the last 2 weeks. It's been fun, but I'm glad to have it back. All right. So I guess I need that back over here because I need to install it.
So do you have Homebrew installed?
Not yet.
Okay.
That was on my to-do list today. Am I going to need it?
No.
Okay. Download. I don't know which.
Do you have Apple Silicon or Intel?
Intel.
Then the x86-64 one.
Okay. Thank you. At least it's letting me do this way instead of over command line, since I don't, because you have to have. What does Homebrew do? Since you're here, I'm just going to ask you random questions as we go.
That's fine. So Homebrew is a package manager. So you would normally just type brew install go, and it would do all of this for you. And the best part about using a package manager to install things is when you want to clean them up. So package manager will keep track of every file that gets put anywhere on your system. And so if you decide, I hate Go, I never want to do it again, you can brew uninstall Go, and it will clean everything up.
Interesting. And how do I say the name? Canini is what we're going with. And my bad if I totally butchered your name. Said it's a really bad package manager. Is that kind of, but Volta only does it for JavaScript and Node. But isn't that a kind of like a package manager too?
I've never heard of Volta before. Is that an NPM client?
It is a JavaScript tool manager.
Oh, okay.
So, sure.
Yeah,
all right.
You could consider that. That's very specific for Node, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, that would be cool. Thank you, homie. I did have a to-do list that I was going to do, and then Eddie and I like figured out schedules, and we're like, we're doing this today. But Anthony created like a gist for me to be able to get started on like all these installs today. So I closed it, but I think Go is here now.
So let's see. Can you open your terminal up?
Yes.
And type reload. Okay, that might be a different thing. Just close this and open a new one.
Easy enough.
Yep.
We'll do that. This was on my to-do list today too, was to actually, there's like so many different versions that you can do with this. And I was like, that's so cool. Then it won't be boring.
All right. So you want me to teach you lots of different things, right?
Sure.
So I'm going to, one of the biggest tricks that so I do a lot of mentoring for different code schools, and I work with a lot of beginners. And so typing out paths in your terminal is not something you want to spend your time doing. So just type CD for me. You hit enter. So that's going to go back to your home directory. So now if you do CD and then space, hit tab on the keyboard, and then type in like DE, and then hit tab, and then hit tab, and then CO, you might have to do D. Cool. And then tab again. Yeah, you got it. So you want to tab complete everything. You want to type as little as possible in that terminal. And most commands will actually have tab completion to help you with the command that you're typing. So it'll know the flags to pass it, or it will know what it can do.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's looking in your path. It's kind of a list of places to look for programs to call. And so that is showing you all the programs that you can call. Those are all named MK something.
Yeah, I was seeing how it would come up with MK dir MK directory. Make directory. Oh, yay, this was fun. All right, and then I'm trying to think of how to check, like how would you check to see if Go installed?
Yeah, so we're going to type which go.
Like this which?
That which. Cool. So which is a command. So I mentioned that path thing before. So if you type echo space dollar capital path, $, all capital. So this is going to show you your path. So this is a list of folders on your computer that whenever you run a command, it's going to search through starting from the left to the right.
Oh.
And so you see here, go has actually been added to your path at the end.
Interesting.
And so the which command, so you can have conflicting programs sometimes, right? You can have multiple programs named go, for example. And so typing which go will show you which command is going to be called when you type go.
All right.
You can do which dash A and it'll show you all the programs named go. I go on forever. But you have go now.
Yay, we can go. Let's go.
Okay.
Yay.
So let's start with go version. Just type that out. Make sure. Cool. So that's the other way, right? So we checked if the binary is there, and now we're checking to make sure you have the latest version installed.
Yay.
And so we mentioned earlier, right? So one of the big differences between Go and JavaScript is going to be that Go is a statically typed language. And so statically typed is, you know how in JavaScript, when you write a function, you just say, hey, this takes in a variable. And you don't really tell your program what kind of variable it's expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no enforcement. So I could call your function and give it a string or a number or a Boolean, and it'll just take it. And it could be what you're intending, and it could be what you weren't intending, but it will call it and run it until maybe something breaks. And that's what we call dynamic typing, right? And Python is the same way. TypeScript is kind of like a statically typed version of JavaScript that has some other features built in, and Python actually has some typings now that you can add in too. So I did a lot of JavaScript back in the day, and moving to a statically typed language kind of just makes you feel better because your editor is going to do magic stuff for you because it's going to know what your function is expecting to take in or return and can kind of help you with more auto completion.
That being said, and I don't think these have anything to do with each other, but it's like, for some reason, it's stuck in my head as somehow connected, of a compiler language. And I don't know what else there is. What is a compiler language?
Yes. So Go is a compiled language.
Okay.
And so when you're using JavaScript, for example, that's what we call an interpreted language. So there's a JavaScript interpreter that will slurp in your JavaScript text file, and it will kind of read it and execute it. And it'll do all sorts of different like parsing and all this jazz, right? But for that JavaScript code to run, you have to have a JavaScript interpreter.
Right.
Same thing with Python. You have to have Python installed.
Right.
So with a compiled language like Go, you can compile all of your code, your whole project down to a single binary. And I can send that to you. And as long as you have the same architecture that I built that binary for, right? So if you have a Mac on Intel, so I can build you a binary, and you don't have to have Go installed, actually. It'll just run because it kind of has the Go binaries have a runtime built in. But it's usually compiled to some type of like machine language that something can run. Like Java, for example, is a compiled language technically, right? It compiles out to like Java class files that a JVM will run. Then there's also the whole thing of like transpiling, which is big in the JavaScript world, where you can transpile your new fancy JavaScript code down to older code that can run in older browsers. So it's going from like one thing to another. But compiled is just different parts of like the compiling step where like linking and all this other jazz. But it's just the idea that you can build down to like usually like a single binary or some byte code.
Okay. That makes some sense. Like it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. And then if I go back to, and what did you call that Go is that JavaScript's not again? The
a statically typed.
Yeah. So static typed, going back to that, just to repeat back, is that means that compared to also like Python, like in Python, you can tell it to share or like this exponent can or sorry, I'm trying to think back on what we're currently working on. It's like we can make 5 equal a food, for example, or something like that, because so it can be very open
Mhm.
and to discretion, where Go is like not like that.
Yeah, Go will be very strict. So when we declare a variable as a string, it can only ever be a string.
Okay. Okay. That's okay. I'm starting to connect.
Yeah.
I'm starting to connect. Okay.
So let's do one more thing in your terminal here. Let's initialize a Go project, just like you would run like npm init. So with Go, we're going to do go.mod init, and then we're going to give it a project name. And so this is generally, most Go projects are just GitHub paths. So do like github.com/your username/let's go.
You said GitHub dot username
.com.
.com
Yeah.
dot username.
Most Go packages are URLs.
What's after user?
Do slashes, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. You
Yeah,
might
so
have said that.
Username, and then do the project name. So whatever you want to call it.
I'm still having fun with Let's Go.
That's great. Cool.
Oh, that was fun.
Yay. So now see, we have that go mod file. That's kind of going to keep track of our dependencies and build our project. And it's a lot better than how Go used to be.
Okay. So that created the project.
Yep. Oh,
Okay.
I can, look at me. I can type around in here. Whee.
Yes. It's a lot of fun. I personally would have no idea where to go with this, because I'm used to like, even in like all the JavaScript language frameworks that I've been learning, it would have like way more files and a lot more content in it just to install something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, we'll get to dependencies at some point. See, one of the big differences is specifically between Go and JavaScript is Go has a very large standard library built in.
Okay.
JavaScript is a very small standard library and API surface. So, most Go developers will use the baked in things because they're there, right? I don't have to go install a library to do an HTML, like build a web app, right? I can just use the standard library because it's like real feature packed. So you actually wind up using a lot less dependencies when you're writing Go.
Okay.
So let's create a new file. We'll just call this main.go. And, click that install button there. This is going to install some Go tools and stuff. Go please command. Yeah, do install all. Let's see if that works. Yeah, there we go. Oh, God.
It's doing all the things.
Yeah, that's okay. This is you need a C compiler, it looks like.
I should really just start adding to the list of things I need to install. So any that you suggest, I will share with you what I already have suggested, and Homie has one for me now. So I'm like, I end up having to, I'm cursed with technology. So me and having to get a new laptop or hard reset my laptop is not a new thing. So I really should come up with a list that is like, make sure you do all of this, Jen, to make your laptop work for you.
Yeah. Well, one day you'll transition to a point where you can get a new laptop, probably run one script, and you'll have your full work environment set up, because at least that's what I have.
Oh, that's cool. And Homie has a question, wondering when you started, what influenced you to become a Go developer? Do you use JavaScript as well?
Yeah.
Good
so
question.
Up until, I don't even know when, 2016-ish, I would have considered myself a Node developer. I did a ton of backend JavaScript. I also played around with React at one point. It made me learn a little bit more about front end, because React's a pretty fun thing to do. And I started working in the containers and Kubernetes and cloud native world. And most of that tooling is all written in Go. And so that kind of just led me to learn Go and start working on things like Kubernetes and Terraform and some other big, Go tools out there. And yeah, I love it as a language. I still love JavaScript as a language. It has its faults, just like everything. You'll learn a lot of the Go faults pretty quickly. But yeah, it's, you know, when I was younger and immature, it's just like, oh, like PHP is awful, like JavaScript's awful. And then you kind of just get to the point where you're like, these are just tools, right? And the more tools you have in the toolbox, it's way better. You know, for certain things, I would still write a web application in Node over Go, right? If I needed to prototype something much quicker. And you'll kind of feel the pain at some point.
It's been kind of cool where I think I've learned more. Yes, it can be very, very confusing as I'm getting started, but like looking at Python compared to JavaScript, I'm understanding JavaScript better. And it's I really hope you don't take 15 minutes.
We can switch to probably mine if we need to. But on that note, actually, one of my favorite classes when I was in school was called Principles of Programming Languages. And the whole point of that class is it taught you how to learn programming languages, which is exactly what you just said. And the more you learn, the easier it is to learn new languages. Like I did a Ruby, you know, many moons ago, and at one point I had to write some Perl, and I'd never done Perl before, but Ruby was inspired a lot by Perl, especially like their syntaxes and variables. And I was like, oh, like now I get where Ruby got this from. Like, this is familiar to me. I can figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big, so next week we're going to have, Brittany was on Tuesday talking about Svelte. And then Anthony, who has been on the show quite a bit, I like to call him like my my internet big brother. Why? Is maybe we should switch to your computer because mine is just struggle busing. It's definitely something that, so next week they're going to compare and talk about React versus Svelte. And I'm like, I'm really excited because
cool.
You might know this. Is there some type of platform that you're aware of for VS Code or something that tells you what language something's written in? Because like in JavaScript, you'll have some HTML, you'll have some CSS, you may have TypeScript and JavaScript. And it would be really helpful if a line just told you like, hey, if a line is this color or has this dot or something, then it's TypeScript. Just to learn, because I'm like, I can read the code and figure out what it's going to execute, but then it's not always making sense that what languages are going into that.
Yeah, there's parsers, there's syntax highlighters and other tools that will pick it up. You could probably paste it. There's probably a web app you could paste it in. It'll tell you what language it is.
Okay, that's cool.
All right, so and then, I'm getting this started. Hold on.
Cool.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I don't know.
Okay.
That is the fun part of live streaming is like, I don't know. It's not going to be perfect. It's cool. It's cool. I do want to go back to.
All right, I sent you the link.
Sweet. Okay. Is it going to open in my VS Code or in my web browser, or what are you going to do? I don't know. I'll just move it over here. Continue in web. Let's do that because, oh, now you want me to sign in again. Goodness gracious.
This highlights a great pain point when it comes to getting started with developing. It's gotten so complicated. There are other tools that when I work with students, I usually use like REPL tools or like one-off editors, but yeah, getting a development environment set up is complicated.
Right. I will reshare my screen here shortly.
All right.
There we go. Yay.
You in here?
I believe so. Helps if I actually make the right screen. Now it's really big. Yay.
What was your GitHub username?
Jenn Junod.
Jenn.
Junod.
Let's go. All right. So I created this go.mod file, so we should be on the same page. I see it.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, okay.
Yay.
So I'm going to create that main.go. Open that up. And so the way Go does everything is with packages. So package is kind of just going to be a folder in our case, right? It's like a folder of software. You can get like sub packages and other complicated stuff, but for our point now, we'll just say a package is a folder. And so our first package is going to be the main package. And so if you want to go type in there package main, and main is a special reserved package name. Yeah, see, it even knows it. So this is the entry point to your program. So this will be like your index.js. This will be the program, the file that all your Go code is going to start in.
Okay.
And so we also need to declare a function. And so to do that in Go, you're going to say func, and then space, and call this main. Again, special function name. Open close parenthesis, and a little curly brace. Ooh, outside the print, sorry.
Like that?
No, like you would in JavaScript, where you open a curly.
Okay, there we go. Ah. I like how it auto creates the other ones, but it doesn't auto delete them.
Yeah, I'll just clean this up a little. There we go. Cool. All right, so we got our func main. You can't see because my name is there. And so if we save this file and run it right now, it should actually just work. And actually, I don't think you don't have a terminal, do you? Can I open a terminal?
Interesting.
Let's see.
No.
How do I open a terminal in VS Code?
I know in VS Code itself, but oh, there you go. Yay. Oh yeah, you're using the real VS Code.
Can you see that? Oh, you can. Okay,
yes.
Cool. All right. The prompt's a little messed up, but it'll work for now. All right. So now if we run go run on this main.go file, oh, we didn't save it. We need to manually save it here. All right. Cool. So our program go run is kind of like your almost interpreter. It'll compile the program and then run that executable. And so we say go run, and it just kind of ran the file. It didn't do anything yet. So let's make it print out hello world, as is tradition. And so the way we do that with Go is with the package called format, or FMT, fumpt. So if you, inside that main function, and yeah, just come down a line, and then do FMT.
FMT? Okay,
yeah.
FMT.
Dot print line. Yeah, you use that tab completion that comes up. There you go. Right, and so the Go tooling is really cool. So it imported the package for you because it knew what you were using. So if you open a parenthesis now, it's going to tell you everything about this function and everything it takes in. So this will take in anything, which is kind of like a wildcard type in Go.
So will it automatically do the print because it's in here?
Yes.
Hey.
So that's not going to work. And can you guess why? So if you click away and let's save that. Let's see if your editor yells at you. Yeah, I need to save it. All right. Well, I have a squiggly red line under what's inside this function.
Is it? Oh, because I didn't put these things.
Yes.
These things that totally made sense.
So that's not going to work either, but I'm not going to expect you to guess this one. So there's a difference between a single quote and a double quote in Go.
Oh, I didn't know that. Like, that's weird because the rest of them are like pretty, like interchangeable.
So a single quote in Go is for what we call a rune, which is like a single character. It's like a char.
Okay.
And so double quotes are for a string.
Okay.
So now if we save this and run it, we will see a message printed out.
Yay.
And so we can also do a Go build. And that's going to build us the file name there. So you see let's go is compiled. It's that green tells you it's an executable in your terminal. And so I can run that and it'll run as the same. And so like I could actually send this to you if I built it for Mac. I'm running on Linux, but I could build this for Mac, send it to you in an email, and you could download it and run it basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. And so let's see, this is probably one of the smallest Go programs we can do. So we can look how big it is. 1.8 megabytes, which is kind of big. And that's one of the complaints that you hear about Go sometimes. Go does wind up with a little bit bigger binaries because the entire Go runtime gets compiled into your program.
Okay. And this is making sense. And I guess now I just have like a pure curiosity thing of like actually seeing it in action. Other than something small like this. Is there something, are you working on something that you may be able to show us and like what some of the functions look like in Go that you're currently building?
Sure.
Sweet.
I can open you up a project.
You can share your screen and let me know, because I feel like that would be really cool, and something I actually should ask for more often is actually seeing how, like, yes, we're starting to see how it looks like with the getting started with it, but how people are actually using it, especially since you said this is how they build Kubernetes. Homie, you said great question mark. Now you got me lost.
Cool. All right. So I think I'm sharing my screen. Hey, there we go. Oh, I think you're sharing yours. Nope, that is my screen. Hold on. What's going on? That's the wrong screen. Let me share my other screen. The perils of two monitors.
Oh yeah.
I
have two external monitors and my own, so I get mixed up all the time.
So I can show you some Kubernetes code, which is definitely a complicated code base, but it'll give you a good idea. kubectl, which I think you've used before, right? The command line tool for Kubernetes?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, kubectl is the command line tool for Kubernetes, and that's what I primarily work on. And so the way this is structured is we have different like subcommands in here. So I can see commands for creating something or deleting something, right? And I can show you what the command for deleting looks like. So we got all these imports, right? So these are like your built-ins, right? So they have no like URL in them. So these are part of the standard library, and these are external libraries that we've pulled in. So these are kind of all the internal Kubernetes libraries that we use to build things. And so let's see, what's an exciting looking thing. So this is a type. This is a struct in Kubernetes. So we talked about types, right? So you have your basic types of string. We have like 6 different number types. We have integers that are 64 bits long, integers that are 32 bits long. I think there's a 8-bit integer. And then there's unsigned integers, which are, they can't be negative, but they can hold a much larger number because they're much longer. And so then there's Booleans, and we have a whole bunch of other types, right? Another one of these basic types is what we call a struct. This is basically the closest you can get to the class you would use in JavaScript or Python. Python has some other conventions that you could use, but struct is like an object, right? It's like a JavaScript object. And so this is just kind of declaring a type named delete options for the delete command here. And it is of type struct. And then this is declared with a field name. So these are the fields that are in this struct. So it has a label selector field with a string. That's a type string, right? Delete is a Boolean, should delete now, right? All these different types, integers. Time is a duration, right? This is another type. This is how we represent time in Go. Making sense so far?
Yes.
Cool. And so this is the kind of the constructor for that new delete command. So when this gets added to the whole CLI and runtime, this is what gets called. It takes in this factory type here. So this is from another package, this command util. and it is a factory, right, which is an interface, which is another type in Go. Interface is kind of like a contract that your struct can implement, and it can say it fulfills that interface. We don't have to talk too much about them today. Same thing here, like this takes in a stream, right? So this is your standard in and standard out. This is what your terminal will read in or print out, right? That's a struct.
Interesting. And that does make me think of another question. Like, can you show us side by side or an example of how Go makes you use those specific, like you can't have the same type of variables or changes that you would in JavaScript and what those would look like?
Yeah, let's pop back to your editor here. And make this bigger. Does that look okay? It's probably
Yes.
too big.
Thank you.
Yeah, so and so I can write a function here, right? So you should be writing this, but we'll give you a pass now because of your editor situation. So I'll just call this function greet, right? So this is going to take in a name, which is a string, and it's going to return another string. With me so far?
Yes.
Cool, right? So this is how we declare the return type. So this says my function must return a string. If you see here, it's pissed off because we're not returning a string yet, right? Missing return. So if I go to return, let's say like the number 3, it's going to be pissed off again because you cannot use 3 as an integer as a string because it knows it's supposed to return a string. So immediately we can see like the protection that's put in place. And so now let's call that. Let's just say we'll return. I'm going to join a string. We'll say hello and your name. I'm going to pass that name there. So this is kind of like string interpolation. You can do this in JavaScript and Python. So this just says %s says, hey, plug in a string value for this token here. So you use name as that, right? So sprintf is going to return us a string. It's not popping up, but there you go. Right.
Okay.
So this is like we call this like format string. And so now inside here, let's just call greet, and we'll put Jet in there. That makes sense so far?
It does, in the fact that it sounds weird, but it doesn't.
Okay.
Like, it makes sense, but this is like, I think the cool thing about seeing something so new of like, it's going to take some time to sink in. This is one of my favorite things about learning this tech side of things, because it's like, it's so simple, it makes sense, yet at the same time, it doesn't make sense. And I think that's a bit of where I'm at. So yes, it makes sense to, it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Well, if we run this, you'll see it works, right? It says hello, plugs in the name. But again, if I try to pass 3 into that function, it's going to be mad. It's going to tell me, you can't use 3 here. It's supposed to be a string, right? I'm not used to having to save a file. There we go, right? So if I try to run it, it's going to give me that same error. Cannot use 3, which is an untyped integer, as a string value to argument.
Okay.
Right, and so this is a simple example, but you can see like this is giving me protection. Like I'm not going to hit any bugs where my function is expecting a string and I give it a 3 because it won't run.
Now I'm curious. If we do that though, it'll still turn it to a string, so therefore it'll work.
That will be the string 3, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm getting there.
Okay. Where do you want to go next?
I don't know. I don't know what to ask because it's like at the same time, this happened. So I told you how last week I started talking about Kubernetes and Docker, and it was way over my head. I definitely didn't have the questions to ask because it's like, it's so new, yet because of like learning about that last week, and one of the speeches that I heard in a Denver Startup Week, the way that when you were looking at all the Kubernetes stuff and it had all of the commands for it, I'm like, oh, that totally makes more sense the way that's structured, because it's for Kubernetes compared to if you were coding, and I wouldn't have put 2 and 2 together without this like way of the overwhelm, like just getting an idea of something before actually going into it. What is something that you think we should know about Go that would interest people?
Yeah. So one of the things that trips people up a lot is what we call pointers, right? And so you've done JavaScript before, and you know how let's say we do this, right? Let me see if I can still write JavaScript. Right, so I'm going to say, I'll just say function main, a function do work or something, okay? So, and we'll call main down here. And so I'm going to create a new object, right? A JavaScript object. So I'll say object equals name Eddie, right? And then this will take in that object. We'll say do work with object, and we'll print out that object afterwards. Okay, you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, so in here, I'm going to say object.name equals Jenn. Okay, and so when I go to run this, you see what happened there? Right, I declared my variable here. So I said, this is a constant named object. And you're familiar with constants in JavaScript, right? Yeah, so I can't reassign that. But I print it out. I pass it to this function. And then I print out the same variable, right? So I didn't give that other function my variable, right? I said I called it with it, but I didn't intend for it to do something to it. Is that expected behavior for you?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's give another example, right? So instead of object, we'll just call this like num, right? So this will be the number 3, right? And we'll do the same thing here. We'll print out num. Right, and so inside here, I'll say num is equal to 7. Cool. When I run this, what's going to happen? What's going to be the output?
Well, I would have thought that it would have been the number 3.
Both times?
I don't.
It is the number 3. So why was it different when we did it with an object?
I don't know.
You see the problem, right? You see what we ran into?
Because of because
like this. Same thing. We'll say object.name equals Jenn. Right? I did the same thing. I reassigned the variable I was passed.
Oh, so it's saying that like you've reassigned everything, but because the first one was the number 3, that's how Go makes it like it's going to make it stick to its guns no matter how many other times you redo things.
So this is where we get into another principle of like programming, where we say pass by reference or pass by value. Have you heard that term before? So JavaScript has a mixture of both. And so pass by value is where this is pass by value. So when I'm giving a number 3, Number is a primitive, right? So that is like an actual number, like the type of number is it's a value, right? So when I pass that to a function, it gets a copy of that value. It doesn't get the original variable I gave it. But with an object, when I take this object and I call it with this, objects in JavaScript are passed by reference. So this is actually taking in a reference to the original variable. So when I mutate that reference, I'm actually mutating the original variable.
Your words make sense, but it's not sinking in yet. But that's why I'm like, it's so weird. Like, it's not going to click now, but then later on, somebody else will say something and be like, oh my God, I finally like understood it.
Yeah. This is a lot.
It's interesting. It's like,
So there's two different, what I'm getting at is there's two different types of passing a value, right? So there's pass by value, pass by reference. So JavaScript has a mix of the two. Objects in JavaScript are always passed by reference. So when I hand it to another function, it gets a reference to the original object. When I pass it a number or a other primitive, right? If I just had a regular string, that's also a value. So if I give that to a function, it gets a copy of that value. And so where I'm going with this is when we do things in Go, I can create a variable here. I can be more explicit in how this works. So I can say var string or var name string is Eddie, right? We'll do the same thing. I might be wrong. Declared but not used, right? So, okay, so sidetrack. Go is very strict on a lot of things. It's very conventional. There's like basically one way to do things in Go, and it checks. So this is actually a check for an unused variable. And so this actually won't even run. It won't compile, it won't run, because you're not allowed to have unused variables in Go. So there's like a lot of those little safety features that kind of help you write better code. So it's going to be mad until I use that variable. So I'm going to say name in here. So this is going to work as expected, okay? If we run that, we get hello Eddie. Still with me?
Yes, and I think something that is also making it click more now that you're doing it over here is like if with JavaScript, it would also like if we got the same type of error, we would have to use like a console log or something like that if we haven't completed it out yet, just so that way it compiled it too.
Yeah, it would give you like undefined warnings or other things.
Okay, so this is starting to click.
And so that actually leads me to one of the pain points in Go that I find is Go has no concept of undefined or null.
Oh, okay.
So everything in Go has a default value. And so if I say var, s string, the value of s here is going to be the default value of a string. So if I go print this out, it's going to be an empty string. That's the default value for string. Let's say that s was actually an integer. What do you think the default value of an integer is?
0?
It is 0.
Okay.
And so the pain point I have here is when I'm working with this variable, I can't tell if it was set to 0 or if it is the default value of 0. And so that comes around to bite you in like very certain situations where, you're like, I'm not sure if I was passed, like I work on CLI tools, right? So if you say, do something, maybe let's say you write a sleep command that'll just sleep for like a number you give it. Let's say you give it 0 seconds. I have no idea if you passed in 0 or if it defaulted to 0. And so that leads to problems where like, let's say that, when it's 0, it should sleep forever. Well, if you say sleep 0, you want to sleep 0 seconds, like, it could wind up sleeping forever. And yeah.
Real quick, so Homie asked, so if I change a reference to a variable, I just change the variable that points to the value. When I change the value, I change the actual value. Is that correct?
Change the variable that points to the value. Almost. The reference is pointing to the same value. So if you change if you change what it points to, you're changing the original pointer. So I can actually reassign that object. Let me do this in Go. It'll make a little more sense here. So where I'm going is, right, we have the string. And so if I do the same thing here, so let's say that I say name equals Jenn, right? And I return name. And then we'll just, I don't know, we'll just print out regular name in here. Okay. So I'm going to call greet, pass it name. It's going to set name equal to Jenn and return name, right? But this is its own copy here. So when I run this, it wasn't reassigned to Jenn. It didn't reassign this variable to Jenn. It assigned this one, right? This here, because this is a value that got passed in. If I want this to be a pass by reference, we use something called a pointer in Go. And so this is used in C and other languages too. So I can say that name is actually giving me a pointer to a string. And we declare that with the little % sign here. I mean, the star sign. So string is going to, it's going to be more complicated. I'll just say string equals Eddie. So this is inferred typing in Go. So this colon equals, I don't have to declare the type ahead of time. It will just know from the right side that this is a string. So this is what we wind up using usually. And so now I have string. No, I shouldn't call that string. We said name, right? So name equals Eddie. So inside of here, let's say I call greet. I want greet to take in a pointer to a string now. And we'll do what we did before. Print out name. So greet has to take in a pointer, I've said, right? So the star says this should be a pointer, which is a reference. And so I can say, hey, pass a reference to this variable. That's where we use the ampersand. So this actually gives it the memory address to this variable. You still with me?
I am. And another thing that just kind of hit me is the fact that I think this is where, especially for newbies that don't like, when you start in the coding world, people aren't necessarily explaining like what language to start with, because when you start, they're all really complicated.
Yeah.
But what you would use a language for, and kind of what it's almost like what logically makes sense to them is kind of where I'm getting. Like to some people, what you're doing right now is going to make so much more logical sense than what JavaScript does, for example. So,
but absolutely.
Yes, because it's pointing to the second one, therefore it's going to basically ignore the first one,
right?
Even though the first one is the declared one.
Right. Well, this actually is this one. They're the same one because I gave it this address of this one. So it took in a pointer to that original variable. This is what we call a dereference. So this just says, hey, because this value, name by itself, if I print out name in here, it's going to be a memory address, which you probably haven't seen before, have you?
No.
This is a hexadecimal memory address. This is how virtual memory is represented on your computer. So it's got, think of your RAM sticks. They're just like rows and rows and rows of addresses that can hold values. And so this is an address to one piece of your RAM stick in your computer.
I don't know why I find this so fascinating, how confused I can get learning this stuff. But like, it seriously, it's Yeah, it's beyond me at the moment, yet at the same time, it slightly makes sense, which is so weird.
But this is complicated, right? Like this is not, I wouldn't call pointers the beginning of learning Go, right? Especially while you're learning programming in general. But this is one of the major characteristics of the language.
Okay.
Right. And so here I said, right, so this is printed out the name, which is the address, right? That's what we got there. And then I say, I want you to actually change the value at that address. And that's where that little dereference star comes in. So that says change the value of name to be Jenn. And so that actually changed this variable because we see it printed out twice.
Interesting.
All right. You want me to downshift a little bit? So I'm a little easier?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Homie just asked, the first print of Jenn was the main brackets due to the pointer. The second print was from the greet brackets, correct?
Yeah, that's the return. Yeah. I'm just returning that string. We could ignore that if we... I did it confusing, but yes, you get the idea. Okay, so what do you want to build? You want to build something very simple.
I would say most times when people are like wanting to come on the show and want to build, it's normally like a web app.
Okay.
Just so that way it gives a reference to something to build and can edit.
So have you done back-end web apps before or just the front-end part?
Mostly. Oh, that's a good question.
Have you done Node servers or Python servers?
No.
Okay.
I feel like you need to come back on the show now. Because I'm curious about that stuff, but a lot of people have been doing much more front end.
Yeah.
And I like a front end. I think it's really cool, but I would say even to what we were talking about earlier, like if you're talking about actually question, my thought went from a statement to a question midway through. Because like things like databases and APIs and that kind of thing are going to be more back end, not front end. And that's really where my mind goes, especially but it's not as easy to learn is what I'm realizing, is where I'm like, because seeing how something is, I don't think like not compiled like the languages, but like a database is compiled and puts out to the front end, or an API, is linked and put out to the front end, is really cool. Like when we, but it is really like more of, I'm curious how stuff works.
Yeah, I wouldn't say backend is more complicated. It's just different.
So no, I don't think I've done a lot of backend to like actually say whether or not to compare the two.
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't know whether to super overload you by doing that, or we can pivot to something else.
I would say we can pause. I would say we can pause, because I think it definitely is. We went through the complexities, which oddly I really enjoy doing even when I don't understand it. And Homie said front end. So I'm guessing that means that majority of the things I've done are front end. Because Homie has been here for, I want to say, like at least 25 of the 38 shows that I've done.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that now I'm a lot more curious about. I think that I've only done something with MongoDB once.
Okay.
So
can I show you one more thing before we bounce out? All right, let me turn this back on. I'll just show you what a that doesn't go there. I'll show you what a web server would look like in Go, just real quick. So we use the HTTP library, right? And I'm going to just kind of type this out quick. So this is a what we call like a HTTP handler. This is common for any kind of backend programming. So whether you do this in Node or JavaScript, this is kind of how we approach building web apps. So this is going to say when a HTTP request, so when your browser makes a request to the root of the domain, right? So in your new browser here, right? So if we have like google.com, right? Well, there's actually like a magic hidden slash at the end of google.com there. Right. That's like
Right. So
the
that
root.
way it may go to the index file. It may go
Yes.
to like, and I think that is something that luckily that file structure I learned from hosting at GoDaddy when I worked in hosting there. But it is something that other than that, I'm like, okay, I get file structure. Yay.
Yeah. So this is okay. So you understand that. So that's the path.
Hmm.
So that would go to your file on the disk if there was index,
Hmm.
right? HTML.
Hmm.
I'm just going to send back a message, and then I'm going to start up the web server. You know what a port is yet?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to say port 8080 here. So this is kind of like the basic hello world of a web app in Go. So let me make sure it works. Browser Go. There you go. See, you got the hello world printed back.
Interesting.
I just sent back the string hello world. I could have done something wild, like we'll just say HTML body h1 hello world h1 body HTML. Would that look right?
And close that one, right?
Okay, thank you. Right, so this came back as HTML. We can see in the, so it's the H1.
See, that's what I'm wondering if like there's an app that would go into what you just wrote to be able to be like, this is HTML and this is Go.
Oh, from like a website?
Not from a website, but just looking at the coding. Because yes, I
Okay.
could tell that like it says HTML in it, but you know, when you're doing JavaScript, TypeScript, and HTML, it may not be as obvious. So that's why I'm like, I wonder if there's like an app somewhere out there that does that.
Let's find something. I have
But
this Chrome extension that I really like.
to do it more in like VS Code than or like whatever I'm coding in compared to the web app. But I mean, that could be the same type of thing.
Yes, for sure. This one, Chrome extension is called Wappalizer. Oh, here you go. This is a good example. So this can look at a website or a web app and tell you the technologies that it's using.
Oh, that's
So here
cool.
you can tell Airbnb is using React. This is using Ruby on Rails. Some other bits in here. Has Google Analytics on it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I like this extension a lot. You can kind of get a feel. Most days, things are just like a static HTML site, and so you can't tell what their backend is. But sometimes it can detect from like a header or something that this is Ruby on Rails.
Got it. All right.
So yeah, it's just called Wappalizer.
Interesting.
I don't know where the. There you go. So yeah, so that's what a web app would look like in Go. And so you could build your React app and read that file from the disk and serve it here, or like build it as a single string if you wanted to here. It's the same kind of deal. Like this is just a web server serving something to a request.
Interesting. Okay. And then Homie asked another question and did this answer it? That seemed pretty easy. Can you explain why you normally choose Node over web server to build this?
It goes back to like the right tool, right job kind of thing. I think that Node does something. Do you know what a WebSocket is? Have you learned that one yet?
Like I know what it is, but I don't know what it is at the same time. It's really annoying being a part of like API stuff because I'm like, I know what it is, but do I? Do
Yeah.
I? Homie knows, and that's what matters because he's the one asking the question.
Yeah, so if I ever had to do anything with WebSockets, I would probably just use Node because it's like Socket.io and like the Node JavaScript experience for WebSockets is just such a good experience that like that's the tool I would use for that job. At the end, Go is probably going to be more performant if you need a really performant web app, just because it's a statically compiled language. And Go is a concurrent language too, which we didn't talk about a lot. So you know about the event loop in JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So JavaScript is single threaded. Right now, there's like worker threads that you can kind of do, but JavaScript is single threaded. Only one thing runs at a time.
Right.
With Go, we have like a concurrency built into the language. So if I want to do something concurrently to another thing, I can start two functions and they'll both run at the same time. There's a whole like that's actually Go's strong suit. Is anything to do with like concurrency or distributed language types, distributed networking and server type stuff? That's where Go really shines.
Would Okay, I'm gonna have to noodle on what I'm thinking of, because it's very confusing in the fact of when I'm learning this stuff and I'm like, wait, this question did make sense, and then I'm thinking about it and it doesn't make sense. So I am enjoying the learning of all of this, and thank you for at least explaining a bit about more about why people talk about Go. I may not fully understand like all of the like things you were doing, but it's enough to be like, okay, now I understand why why these are built with Go instead of with like JavaScript or Python, because those, I would say, when I was asking people what languages I should learn, everybody, like my first language, almost everyone was like JavaScript or Python. Those were the main two. And so learning what like Go does, or at some point it would be cool if I could learn like what some, like if they're even used, but a C# or C++ or C even, or like Java, like what are those differences? Like those are all things that, like, why do we still use them, but nobody starts with them?
Yeah. You saw a lot of it today, right? You don't want to have to worry about pass by reference, pass by value.
Yeah.
Pointers, types, all these other things, right? So I agree completely. When people are learning Java to program, I tell them Python or JavaScript as well.
Yeah. So this at least is answering why. And this is like something I think, and you and I talked about this when we first met. I've talked about this before. I think I would really struggle going through a course because I don't always understand. I'm like, I need to know the why of why don't we do this? What does it do enough? So that way I can go, okay, let me refocus on what I'm supposed to be learning.
Totally.
Because it's like really, really hard for me not to just go down the deep end of wanting to go, okay, I'm suddenly going to go like go learn Go because it's cool and I don't know it. Why does everyone say no?
Yeah.
So thank you for at least solving that curiosity. And Homie said, exactly. I feel like I have a better general understanding of where Node.js kind of fit into the tech eco.
Yeah, of course.
And that's a great way of saying it. Is that's what I am working on learning, Homie, is like the tech ecosystem, because I don't think that's explained really well anywhere, at least that I've seen.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I work with a lot of students and beginners, and so learning different languages is cool, but you definitely should get a foundation for basics of programming, right? Which you're learning and you're working on. Like every language has an if statement. Every language has some kind of for loop or while loop.
Actually, that's what we're working on in Python right now. So it's been really cool to have Laura on this show because it's giving me some structure. We were going every other Monday. We're now going to do it every Monday as we're going through the Automate the Boring Stuff book. And it's cool because it's like, okay, I don't think I could ever sit through a class or a course if it was just this. I would be like, I'm out, I'm done, because I tried going to school for this. Yet now that it's like, okay, I have this one dedicated day and I can learn about everything else, it like really happily comes together. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm like, I can do the complex stuff and learn the basics at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah. We had a summer intern and he spent a good chunk of it learning and reading Automate the Boring Stuff. And yeah, I've heard great things. So
it is so cool. His books are also very funny. And when I watch his live stream, I always just want to ask him to show the kittens that he is fostering at the moment.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Eddie, I think this is good for today. I definitely learned a lot. I know we have quite a few viewers, so if anybody has any questions before I see if I can raid you into Distribute Aid's OSS stream. I have fun now that I've like learned how to raid.
Huh.
I've done it like twice before, I think, like twice ever.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm definitely happy to come back. And so what I actually had planned, I didn't know where along you were in your journey so far, but what I had planned today was to build a URL shortener like Bitly or something.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah. I think that would be way too much right now.
Yes.
But that when you're ready for it, I can come back and that's what we can do.
Sweet. Are you aware of Quick.js and that framework?
No.
Well, Mishko, who built Angular and AngularJS, has come out with Quick, and he was on the show, like, I want to say one of my first 5 people on the show. And he was like, let's do Hacker News. And the person that I like to call my internet big brother of Anthony was like, dude, don't do that. You don't even know that Hacker News existed. So it has been a lot of fun to learn all of this.
Yeah,
it definitely has been. So,
and that's what I tell beginners too, is as you're learning, so get the basics first. And then as you're learning new things, pick a project that you're going to do in every language or framework. And so my project for learning a new language is I build a URL shortener, right? I use a little database called SQLite. And it's like, it kind of touches everything, right? Like it has to write to the disk. It uses a database. It serves a web app. For front-end frameworks, when I was doing more front-end, I would build my own version of Giphy using Giphy's API, which was really easy to do, actually. You can use their search or the random API. And so that was my like hello world for JavaScript frameworks.
I will say that there is an app I really want to build, but I don't know what goes into it to even like start. And I don't even know if apps are anything. I just wanted to do something. So every Wednesday I host a Twitter space that people can like DM me and tell me that they want to be tagged every week. Basically, I just want something that I can like paste the Twitter space into, and it takes like all of the people and tags them and just creates it instead of me having to like copy and paste it. But I'm like, I get that I would probably want to use the Twitter API, and my guess is some type of database to be able to keep track of all of the people that have submitted. But I'm like, I don't even know where I would start, because I don't know what goes into doing something like that, or even what to Google.
Yeah, well, when you're ready for that, we can absolutely do that.
Because that is something that would be extremely helpful in my world. So, because right now I just have them in an Excel file and copy and paste it. It's a really fun thing.
Yeah.
But cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Eddie. And we're going to see if I can actually do this raid. No, I didn't do it right. Let's see. Why? I'm going to get here. I'm going to get it. Why is it saying invalid? Why? Why, Twitch? Why? I know I'm awkwardly causing people to stay here while I'm trying to do this. One of these days, I'm just going to know how to raid. And this was, as I was telling you earlier, I was like, let me I was going to do all this like random stuff earlier. And it was going to be stuff like this, like learn how to set up my Twitch. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Okay, if it's working, y'all are about to be raided in 10 seconds. 2 viewers, 4 viewers are ready to raid. 3, 2, 1. Okay, bye. I think they raided. At least I'm guessing they did. If they did, they did. Awesome.